Hello there and good evening, and welcome to Future Music from the Robot Lab interview file 3. And tonight I will be interviewing Paul Sebastien from Psykosonik and Caesar Filori of Wideband Network, also known as Basic Pleasure Model. Hey guys!
Hey Michael, how are you?
I'm pretty solid, mate. I'm just done 2 shows and I'm really happy how they turned out, and I've had nice 3 days off with missus, so yeah, I can't grumble. How are you guys doing? How are you guys doing? You okay?
We're great. We're big fans of your show, so thanks for doing this. This is a long time in the making. Very exciting.
Yeah, absolute pleasure, man. I'm just so glad to be interviewing you guys finally after, many years of following you as Psychosonic and Basic Pleasure Model since my teenage years. So, yeah.
Awesome.
Cool.
Awesome.
Cool. Okay, so the name Basic Pleasure Model, that came from the movie Blade Runner?
It did. It did, yeah. So, sort of a fairly obvious reference now, but back in the day when we created it, we thought it was sort of a bit less of an obvious pairing. But then, of course, all the Blade Runner, sequels, the director's cut came out after that. So, actually, way back in the day, it seemed like a very original idea. Now it's sort of obvious, but
Yeah.
it works. And I've always loved that movie and the aesthetics, and so it seemed like a fitting thing to do as a follow-on to Psychosonic.
Yeah.
And then I, of course, met Caesar, and we started collaborating, and it all came together.
Cool, awesome.
It wasn't an initial choice. It became a very, we both quickly just sort of snapped to that. It just sort of happened, but we definitely went through a few other alternate names that probably were probably less interesting.
All right.
Yes. Actually, that's right. We have a long-standing joke that we have to share now. No one's ever heard this, but one of the alternate names that we really did seriously consider, but that we just still laugh about. I thought, well, Caesar, something that kind of rolls off the tongue, like, Basic Pleasure Model or something like that. Or perhaps the name Oblique Stick.
Oblique stick.
Oblique Stick. So sort of seemed, like the kind of name that might have been a song off of an old Japan record, something like that, from like the early 80s.
Right.
All right, awesome. Cool. How are things with the new upcoming album? And do you have a title and a release date yet? Or?
Oh, that's a great question. Well, as you know, and as many of the Basic Pleasure Model listeners know, we're really a bit of a joke, actually, in that sense, in that I think the glacial pace at which we've been making progress on getting a full album out is pretty embarrassing. So I think by the year 2152, we should be just about there when Caesar and I are a couple hundred years old. So that's the pace at which we're operating. But no, in all seriousness, we are now in full steam ahead. We are actually finally back in gear, finally creating a lot of new music. It's an exciting time. I was the real bottleneck there. Caesar's been very prolific. But it is in full production. No release date yet, but there is a full album coming, and much more, actually.
Oh, like what?
Well, we want to do more than just music. In true sort of early Psychosonic days fashion, where we did a lot of interactive stuff on the web in the early days. We just want to explore new mediums and sort of, we have this concept of this basic pleasure model lifestyle idea. That's something that Caesar and I have been stewing on for a long, long time. So how that manifests and, what it turns into, I think it'll hopefully be something that'll extend into multiple mediums. So physical things, experiences, even that kind of stuff. So we want to do something beyond just the music itself to sort of extend the experience.
That sounds really cool. Caesar, you have other projects like Jazz Cat Cairo, and you're best known for being one half of Wideband Network. How did you and Paul come together with Basic Pleasure Model?
Yeah, well, it's pretty interesting. I would like to just I'll touch on those two things and how it kind of led to this. Jazz Cat Cairo is actually my solo incarnation of my very first music project I did back when I was a teenager. And that's just the realization of what I thought were like the quote unquote best songs from back then, done in a way using the instruments and level of recording and engineering and production that I envisioned it having that I didn't have back when I had an 8-track reel-to-reel deck and just like a couple of keyboards. So that project was me just kind of closing that chapter of my musical life and realizing those songs to the best of my ability now that I have the capabilities to make them sound like I wanted them to.
Oh.
And then, so that's what that project is. And that's probably what's been released so far is probably that's just kind of a complete package now at this point. Who knows? Maybe we'll do more in the future, but we'll see.
Wow.
Then over the years I did a number of different things, and then worked on a Wideband Network, of course, with Casey Clark, the vocalist and co-conspirator there. I've been doing that project on and off for over a decade or longer. It's quite a long time. But essentially, what happened was I've been a huge fan of Psykosonik from the very first album. I literally remember buying Unlearn at Tower Records on CD and telling the person I was in the car with that they weren't allowed to speak while I was listening to the album on the drive, because I was really wanting to experience it in my Honda Civic with a subwoofer trunk. But then, interestingly, I guess just through circumstance in 2003, we have a mutual friend who introduced me to Paul, but he didn't know that I would know who Paul was or what his musical background is. But then after Paul and I started chatting, and he casually saw the band a long time ago. It's called Psykosonic. I'm like, hold on a second, you're that Paul Sebastien. So he had been doing a number of projects, with people like Thomas Dolby and a few solo things. And he had a bunch of ideas that he was cooking, and I said, we just have to make some music together, and that's kind of how it all started.
Oh, that's awesome, man.
That's right.
Yeah, so
right.
like me then, like you've been following him since day one and that. And well, I got into him since I was like 18, because I previously heard some of your songs, from like the Mortal Kombat soundtrack, and
oh right, yeah.
Yeah, that's how I first heard your name, but I checked you out and I saw the video to Welcome to My Mind, and I got completely hooked. And from my...
You were probably quite dizzy as well, from my head spinning the entire time in the video. I'm still dizzy from that video.
Yeah, yeah, probably. Yeah, and I remember buying your debut album and Unlearn from my local HMV when I was like 18. So, and I just loved it. And,
that's great.
Yeah, and since then, so yeah.
I feel really old right now, you guys. I feel really old. But it's a good thing I've got this ring that I found in Gollum's cave. It keeps me young.
Paul, you've been silent, well, on and off, and you and Caesar formed Basic Pleasure Model back in 2003 with 2 singles. Yeah, how does it feel to be back on things after such a long absence?
It really felt so right. I mean, I was really lucky to meet Caesar. As you said, he was a fan of my prior stuff, which made it real easy to work together, because he knew sort of all of the sort of references and understood kind of where I wanted to go after Psykosonic so well, and he just brought such musicality. And I mean, I'm just going to go and I'm just going to praise Caesar here for a minute. Caesar is a multi-talented musician,
that's
and much like myself, plays multiple instruments, plays guitar, keyboard, just programming, drums, all that stuff, bass. So we both were able just to pick up just the two of us and just start writing instantly with and we just suddenly had this concept that just came together so organically.
Yeah.
And it was really, really easy. It really, really flowed. And then I think we unfortunately we just weren't prolific enough at the time. We did a couple singles back then, and then we just didn't keep going for a variety of reasons. We had different sort of interests, career-wise too, where we were caught up in different things we were doing in the tech industry, and I just think time got in the way. So it's really come back full circle recently with Outside and with some other things that we're doing on really working on new material for the new album. I mean, that's really where it feels like we're back in 2002 or 2003 again, and it really feels even better than it did back then, really. So
an interesting bit is obviously we lived we both lived in Redmond when we first started the project, but now obviously I'm in the Seattle area still, and Paul's in Northern California. But interestingly, even those beginning songs, we didn't work on them together. You know, we started doing separate parts, and you know, I kind of brought it together, and you know, brought in Paul's parts and his initial instrumentation they brought to the table, worked it into it. So it's really a continuation of that workflow. And then, you know, I wouldn't say that we haven't done that we've done zero over this time. I would say that we have a pretty robust catalog of, I'll call it like demos and ideas, and many of which will likely become, you know, full songs on the upcoming album.
Yeah, exactly. We've been dabbling now for a long time, and we just haven't finished anything. It's sort of like the worst case of starting something and then just not being able to finish it. And I've been the bottleneck there because I'm way too critical. I just immediately I'll do something and we'll start with something. It's, you know, it's going well. I get stuck on it and then literally I'll just stop or I'll move on to some other idea. So it's been driving Caesar crazy for probably, you know, a million years, but we're finally going to get over that now because I'm just plowing through it and it's finally happening again. All
right, nice one. Caesar, you previously told me that both Sunyata and How to Live are getting a reworking. Are they going to sound? How are they going to sound compared to the original?
I guess the first layer of that is just production quality. I mean, I go back and listen to stuff I did, and that's a long time ago now. And in just hearing that, okay, this can just overall just sound better. You know, it's hard to quantify that, but it will just, number one, sound better. We have the opportunity to go back and do some, you know, I could call it maybe stripping away something, boosting other things, bringing in a few new elements. But I think it'll be true to the original. It will just sound better, probably a little bit more, concurrent, I would say. But we're not going to lose the overall vibe of the track, I would say. Maybe you'd agree, Paul?
Yeah, I would agree. I think there's certain things we did back then with the tools we had back then, and certain sort of, you know, painful mistakes that we made during the mix downs of those songs where it's like, oh my God, I forgot to mute that stupid cowbell track, right? And, you know, things like that. So less cowbell and more cowbell.
Yeah, for example, I think, Paul, maybe you'd agree that, you know, that recent sort of demo of How to Live, you know, it really by changing really nothing but taking away some elements and just remixing the whole thing, it just sounds way fresher and more interesting and more dynamic.
And there's certain things with the drums too, with beats, you know, in particular that I wasn't happy with. The drums often sound very cardboard-like and kind of just very sterile. And I think there's a lot of room for reinterpreting kind of what we do there, and even certain synth sounds. There's just a lot more, I think, that we wanted to do back then that we weren't able to do, that we could do now. So it's exciting.
Yeah, so sorry, go ahead.
We'll bring in Timbaland to do some beats for us. I'm kidding.
That should be interesting. All right, awesome. I'm just going to have a little break, and I'm going to play 2 snippets of songs from your upcoming album. I'm going to play 1 snippet of Deem, followed by Open Road.
Now, one caveat, Michael, to say to everyone listening, these are very rough, early works in progress. These are not snippets from the final tracks. I just want to clarify.
Okay.
So people are hearing work in progress. They may turn out differently in the end, but hopefully that's even more interesting.
Okay.
Yeah, and these are examples of a couple of songs that, you know, throughout these years that we went back and revisited, and these are like the current incarnations of them because these kind of stood the test of time.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Well, cool. Thank you for the heads up there. I'm just gonna play the snippets just about now.
Right.
there and welcome back. You are listening to Future Music from the Robot Lab, interview file 3. I'm your host Exoskull. Tonight I'm interviewing Paul Sebastien of Psykosonik and Caesar Filori of Wideband Network, aka Basic Pleasure Model. Welcome back, guys.
Good to be back.
Hey. Right, where are we? Back to the questions. As well as releasing the 2 singles, you had a song on MySpace as a free download back in the day called Evil Thing, which I did get back then. How is that going to sound? Will that have a reworking as well, like the original? Or?
Yes. I think we will definitely be pretty much touching everything that we've done and released as singles, and seeing how we can better interpret it to be more what we really wanted it to be in the first place. I think we were limited in some ways, both with tools, but also I think at the time experimenting with different approaches and just coming up with a resulting track as you heard it. And there's some things I think in hindsight now that we'd like to be able to do, but importantly, we don't want to sort of ruin what we did like about the track, and I think what's hopefully still strong about it, and it will not be basically a remake of the Star Wars series.
Yeah.
So you will not have now we can actually have even more of this and more of that. And so if anything, it'll go the other direction. I think they'll be they'll feel more vital and more raw and more honest than the versions that we did back then even sound like. Caesar, would you agree?
And also, I would say absolutely. I'd also say that given all this time that's passed, we've gotten very clear about what this project is and how it should sound and the emotions and feelings it should bring about. And that comes across, not only in the arrangement and the instrumentation and the mix, but just the kind of flow of things. So there'll probably be some arrangement changes, some instrumentation changes. So it's all kind of in keeping with what we now very clearly understand is Basic Pleasure Model. And on the production front, the original demo for that, it all started with literally an acoustic guitar riff I recorded on my balcony of my apartment with all sorts of road noise and stuff outside, which is still the same thing on the actual album. And it does have some unique character to it, but we may want to revisit certain things like that.
All right, awesome. So plus you feel like right now is the right time to make everything with all the technology and stuff like you mentioned before and stuff, right? Is that?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. It's also a great time in music right now. I mean, there's this just explosion of retrowave, synthwave, etc. I mean, it feels like in many ways, while that's not really what we're doing per se, there's some synergies between the interest in this sort of early 80s sort of British pop stuff that I'm a huge fan of, and a lot of the early analog kinds of stuff that now is so is just blowing up, right, with all the synthwave and retrowave and other genres, and people really appreciating the sound of analog tape wobble and vinyl and hardware synths and that kind of stuff. So I feel like that was really the foundation of our thesis for Basic Pleasure Model when we started it. We wanted that vibe. We wanted to go in that direction all the way back in 2002. 2003, and so it's funny to see how that genre now has just blown up. And while we're not going to do sort of very on the nose early 80s sounding stuff to be deliberate, I think some of the organic sort of stuff from that time period is really coming out in what we do, and it's just it feels very authentic. And ironically, it'll fit in, I think, quite well with people who are listening to that genre, because I think they'll be able to appreciate some of the same aesthetic similarities that they'll hear in other stuff that they like from that period. So,
absolutely, Paul. And I was gonna say, as well, some of the things we didn't have access to, but are kind of critical to us, are sounds from the synths that we know and love. Whether it's the Jupiter 8, the Prophet 5, the Oberheim, all these things, and in interacting with those instruments, just causes you to perform differently.
Yeah.
And we didn't have those things back when we started the project. You know, we had a range of things, but we're now, not only in our mind space, but our tools that we're using, it's all exactly as we hoped it would be. So it's a good spot for us.
Yeah, nice one. Some of your songs that feature on the upcoming album, you've got Surrender, Upside Down, Tears in Rain, your latest single, Outside. The track, one of the samples that I've recently, one of the songs that I played earlier was called Deem. I was curious to what that's about. Is Deem a city? Or I don't know.
No, it's funny. It's actually it's a nonsensical reference to something completely unrelated. There was this so there's a concept in meditation actually, and at the time, this is many years ago, I was kind of becoming interested in it, and there were certain sort of mantra words and phrase words that one can use. That was actually one of the words that I was using, and I simply happened to just ascribe that word to the track we had in progress.
Right.
Completely haphazardly, and then it grew. And then it's funny though, once we we called it Deem, it's funny, it did shape actually the direction of that track, and I think even more so today will shape the final version of it. So it's funny how something completely unrelated actually can actually impact the work that you do.
Sorry, I just want to add that, interestingly, when I first re-met Paul, and I, of course, we had our big download of information in between our projects, the first new piece of music I had heard that Paul had created since the last Psykosonik album was this demo of Deem that he had made.
That's right.
And so he sent it to me. I'm like, wow, that's so cool, because, Paul is also a guitarist, and he, played a really cool, kind of funky guitar on that, did some great, percussion stuff, and I immediately, connected with it, and did, kind of took it, did some things with it as well. But yeah, that was actually the very first new thing that I heard from Paul since the last Psykosonik album.
You know what? That's a great memory, Caesar, actually, because I'm just realizing right now that was indeed the first thing I played for you. And the origins of Deem actually go all the way back literally to just right after Psykosonik. I mean, we're talking like late 90s period that I did that. And I was really stuck on it. I didn't know what to do with it until I gave it to you. And then you helped me reinterpret and actually added that bass line, and we changed up the drums. And that's when it sort of came together in its newer version. So you were able to breathe new life into it. I think that was probably the first thing that I realized, wow, we should work together on something officially. Awesome. It's amazing what comes out live during a radio show.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cool. I was just curious though. From what I've played, will Deem be an instrumental or?
I think it'll have vocals, actually.
Paul, newsflash, you forgot, but in preparation for this, I found a project in Logic called Deem 3, and there's all these vocals you did for it. So we'll have to look back and...
They're probably terrible, but I feel a new inspiration recently for them, and one of the things I've really been just having a blast doing lately is just getting back into vocals and getting my voice back in gear after many years of being stuck in a cave, not singing. So I'm really excited now to do vocals again. It's something that I'm kind of doubling down on, if you will. So I think you'll hear a lot of vocal stuff on the new album. So yes, it'll have vocals.
Nice one. I'm really looking forward to hearing it, in its final form. Oh, and do you have any upcoming shows planned, or do you plan to do shows very soon?
We definitely plan to do shows. Caesar and I love playing live, and in fact, the last thing we did as Basic Pleasure Model, we did some shows with Thomas Dolby, actually.
Yeah.
We did some West Coast dates that we did with him quite a while back now, but that was really fun. And actually the response, even just from the two of us on stage doing just a kind of a hastily put together live act, it was just amazing. And we even played a couple old Psykosonic tracks. And so we definitely are going to play live again. And in fact, that's one of the huge motivations for us now to get an album done, so that we can actually get out there and play live. And we'd love to come to the UK as well and do some dates. And we're really excited about it.
Yep.
Nice one.
And we actually did a couple of short, like kind of private acoustic shows just to kind of get which kind of got the rust off in the last 6 months or so. Well, which was fun, just circumstantially. It was great. We did. We even played some covers acoustically, which was funny.
What kind of covers did you do?
Well, this will sound strange and obscure coming from Basic Pleasure Model, but part of it was context. We did actually a Smith song, so we actually did There Is a Light That Never Goes Out, which lends itself well to the acoustic. I've always actually loved that song. And then we did a Prefab Sprout song. So I don't know if you remember the band Prefab Sprout.
I've heard the name.
From the 80s. They are a UK band, one of my favorite bands of all time. And the singer-songwriter Paddy McAloon, I still think is just songwriting genius. And very different genre than you'd expect. I mean, it's sort of very much not electronic, but a song called Bonnie. So again, a purely sort of acoustic song that I have always loved. So we did that. We did a Killer song, actually. We did a couple other tracks, and then and then we did some Psykosonic material as well.
Well, that was acoustic as well.
Yeah. We actually did the song "Need to Die" from Unlearn. We did that acoustically, and it's something that we did a semi-acoustic version live. We played with Thomas Dolby, and it went over so well and sounded quite good live, and so that was sort of part of the inspiration for that.
Oh wow, I'd definitely love to hear that version, acoustic version of "Need to Die," because I know that song pretty well. So yeah.
Oh, good. Yeah, it's funny. It sounds better like that than it did even on the album. I think it's the best songs really often lend themselves to that kind of interpretation. So that was a lot of fun to do.
Yeah.
A lot of our people have found our live Basic Pleasure Model live in Portland show on YouTube, and you can see it there actually.
Yeah.
The one from 2006, wasn't it? That one.
Yep.
Yes. And unfortunately, the sound is not great, and so we sort of sound like shit. I hate to say, at least to me, because it's someone recording it off of just live. So of course my voice sounds completely out of tune, as it was. So it's painful to hear, sort of like looking at your old high school photos. But it was still it was a great show. It was fun to do.
Cool. And when you said about UK shows, I'll give you a heads up. Your best bet is to try London or Manchester, because that has a lot of diversity. So I'd say look into that, because they've got lots of venues that's very diverse. So and I said to Caesar, if you guys ever come over to UK and I come to one of your shows, I'll buy you both a beer.
Well, that's very generous of you. We will buy you at least a couple pints.
Well, I don't drink, but I'll have a soft drink, well, like a J2O. That'll do me fine.
Okay, good. Well, then we'll buy you a couple soft drinks. How about that?
Yep, J2O will do me fine, mate.
Fantastic.
Awesome. Will the album be released under a record label, or will it be self-released?
It will be our own label, so we'll be doing our own record label. We are very, very big on that at this point. And we really have a lot of ideas, again, like I mentioned earlier, sort of beyond just the album itself and just the music itself. So we'd love to do some things in other completely disparate mediums that go along with it. So the idea would be to get the album out there first, and then hopefully once we're playing live, once the album's out there, there'll be other mediums, other things that are related to the album and related to what we're doing that will come after that. And so we sort of view it as sort of a brand, if you will. We're a creative entity that will do music but do lots of other things as well. So we sort of are looking at this very laterally and not just in this sort of linear music only way.
Okay. Oh, awesome. So your record label is it ZDB Records? Is it? Is that the one?
Yes.
Yeah.
That will be the label.
Oh, nice one. Yeah, I remember it on the How to Live and Sunyata CDs because I've got them both. So yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. Paul, you're best known and remembered for Psykosonik in the early to late 90s, and I've been a huge fan since I was 18. A good 15 years now?
Thank you.
Yeah, no worries. And that project had a lot of sci-fi themes to it. Will that be included in Basic Pleasure Model as well, or was that a totally new thing?
That's a great question, actually. I think aesthetically, while the name Basic Pleasure Model does harken back to the Blade Runner stuff and was sort of a natural follow-on to Psykosonic in many ways, topically, aesthetically. Where we're going musically, and I think you can probably hear it even in the music from back in 2003, is very much not sci-fi. So it will not have any overt sci-fi references or any of the cyberpunk stuff per se. I think we're interested in very different things now. Well, I think there's a lot of interesting stuff there. I think thematically, aesthetically, going into much sort of broader and deeper territory with the aesthetics of the new stuff. So, no overt sci-fi, cyberpunk on this album. Now, that doesn't preclude us from doing something completely different with a next album after that. I think there's still a lot of interesting territory to explore with sci-fi in many ways more than ever. But I think where our heads are now, we're very interested in much more sort of organic, lush, sort of tape, early 80s, and also timeless sort of themes and concepts. And I think you'll hear more of that in this next album.
Oh, awesome. Also with Psykosonic, you were working on a third album, which was going to be called Spiritual Machine, was it?
Yes. The third album, the infamous third album. So yes, it is true. We did have a third album in the works before we sort of basically split up. And the album was, I would say, about halfway finished. So Daniel Lenz and I were, sort of midway through. And quite frankly, it just didn't come together in the end, particularly vocally. I think we were sort of heading in different directions. We just didn't sort of have a cohesive, I think, concept for it like we had with Unlearn. And so we had bits and fragments of songs. We had some instrumental tracks in the works. I had done some sort of half-baked vocals for them, and we were sort of working up a variety of ideas. And so the sort of album in progress there were some sort of leaks of that came out. I'm not happy about or proud of any of that material. I just don't. It didn't really do much for me, and just wasn't something I was really, really proud of. So it didn't see the light of day. Whether or not someday a Psykosonic third album could happen, it is certainly possible. Ironically, I actually just had a phone call with Dan literally yesterday, which was amazing. We actually hadn't spoken in a long time. So who knows if at some point down the road something under that name might happen again. But at this point, not. So at this point, I'm working on this stuff and some other projects, and I think Dan's been working on so much, film scoring and trailers and things like that. He's had an amazing career. Actually, he's built up doing film soundtracks and film scores. He's just had a great time doing that. So we're in contact. And we had a great catch up, but yeah, the third album is not going to happen just yet, and it certainly wouldn't be the material that we were working on back then. It would be something new, if anything.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I know he's doing pretty well with it because he's always posting on like all his music featured on movie trailers and stuff like that. Yeah, he seems to be doing really well with it. He's kicking ass with it, so it seems, because he seems to be raking up money in and everything. Because I've seen some of the trailers, and heard the music behind it, and it's like, wow, this is awesome. I love the music behind it. It's like pretty impressive what Daniel can really come up with.
Really, it's amazing. He has developed a very specific sound that he really created. He really created kind of a genre, if you will, of this trailer soundtrack, and has really built an amazing career doing that, and has done so well. I think particularly as a producer, he has his chops just got better and better and better, and so it's really great to see him do that. And we were reminiscing on the phone yesterday about just how surreal it is that way back in the day, working on Psykosonik, on first album in particular, we were in Chicago, staying at the Wax Trax headquarters, and interacting with literally, with KMFDM. They're in the same building. We were hanging out with them. We were with Jim and Danny, the creators of Wax Trax, and it was such a surreal time living there for a while, working on the album. Interacting with them, interacting with so many of the luminaries, from Al Jorgensen from Ministry, and just surreal late night phone calls with Al. Just really amazing stuff. That it's kind of hard to even imagine that we lived through that.
Yeah, that must be a dream come true for you, I bet. Actually being in the actual heartland and the actual building of Wax Trax, that's like the
yes.
heartland. Wow.
Yes, and we stayed upstairs at Jim and Danny's place, there above the record store, literally too.
Oh, wow.
So we stayed with them, which was amazing. Mixed our album there in Chicago at Chicago Tracks with some of the very legendary people there around the time period. So it was really amazing to think back to the time period, and we've never told the stories, right? We've never actually talked about this publicly, but at some point, especially now with the interest from the film that came out about Wax Trax, I have so many stories from that time period that I could tell, that at some point I should probably write this stuff down and probably talk about it. Because there's just some really surreal, amazing stuff. So it was fun.
Awesome. Back to your last album, Spiritual Machine, with Psykosonik. Some of the songs there were featured on Daniel Lenz's solo album, his debut one, Stuck in a Dream. Will some of that be included in Basic Pleasure Model, like in the new album, or anything inspired by it? Or?
No. So, Daniel did take a few of the tracks that we were working on from that third album in progress, Spiritual Machine, and actually ended up using them and reworking them into his own stuff for his album, which was great to see. I'm thrilled that he was able to do that. He really originated those particular tracks, so I think it was completely fair for him to sort of take those and use them like that. So I think that was great to see. But I think very much there's a real kind of a hard line between what Caesar and I are doing and kind of where the two of us have decided to go with Basic Pleasure Model, and then the old stuff from that third album in progress. So there will not be anything from that time period. But that's a good thing, actually, because I think the material we're working on for BPM is I think it's going to be just much stronger and sort of more fitting for what we're interested in now, and much more authentic.
Yeah, something like clean slate, totally new kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So, yeah.
Cool. The two singles you released back in the early 2000s, there was How to Live and Sunyata. What are both songs about exactly, and what does Sunyata mean? I was just curious about that. What does Sunyata mean?
Yeah. So Sunyata, I actually have to give some credit to a former bandmate from Psykosonik, actually for first bringing up the concept. But Sunyata is this concept of there's this idea of the shining void, which is basically the in quotes the place where the flame goes when the candle burns out. So if you get into sort of Buddhism and even into Taoism, this concept of this ephemeral flame, and the ideas around impermanence this place, this shining void concept is really what the track is about. And really, ultimately, I think it kind of boils down to just the profundity of the concept of impermanence, right? Just how profound the notion of impermanence is, and how it just pervades everything. So that's something that I've been just really interested in really since then, and just become quite obsessed by. Like I'm a huge fan of Stoicism, and I do a lot these days, meditation and philosophy in general. So I'm just a big philosophy geek, and so it's that's one of those timeless concepts that now fits very well with, I think, where Caesar and I were going with the basic pleasure model material. And so I think you'll hear a lot of the themes around impermanence and themes around the notion of how ephemeral life is and how fleeting life is. That's something that is a central theme to the material we're doing.
Oh, right.
So that's Sunyata. And then How to Live is... there are also themes of that. It is sort of more about the relishing in the joy of impermanence and seizing the moment and to focus on the moment. And How to Live, there's a French saying called savoir vivre, which basically is to know how to live. And so that's where I got that idea from, was the French saying savoir vivre, or really to know how to live. And it really is sort of, without sounding too erudite, is the concept of really knowing how to live, really knowing how to enjoy the moment, how to enjoy the finer things and the simple things as well, and an appreciation for aesthetics and for subtlety. And I feel like so much now in society, particularly in the arts, has veered away from subtlety and the delicate and the soft, and has moved into hard, aggressive, very front-facing, very black and white, very binary, and very armored. And so, to me, more than ever, increasingly, the importance of a message like the focus on the impermanence, the focus on the enjoying the moment, living in the moment, and knowing how to live and how to enjoy the moment is more vital than ever. And Caesar and I, even back then, when we started working on a song, we literally tried to live it. I mean, we were doing little things like we would hang out together and just like, we would like cook some asparagus, for example, one day. And we were sort of going to great pains to make it sort of the best asparagus ever. And really the subtleties around how perfectly it can be cooked, and the kinds of spices, and we're very much into wine. And Caesar and I geek out about wine a lot. And so I'll let Caesar speak here because I'm dominating all the time here. But this is something that we love, and we want to do more beyond the music medium. This is where I said about other mediums. We want to basically bring this idea and the importance of these things into other mediums. Caesar, go.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it really, you Paul and I realize really very like-minded individuals where it's like, you know, you can go and you can have an experience or do a thing or eat a food or this or that. It can just be like, you know, not really be present in it or not really, you know, have any ceremony around it or something. You know, it's like, it's the difference between going home and, you know, eating a piece of cold pizza, which still can be delicious and great, while you're like kind of watching some, you know, reality TV, and you know, and then cracking open a beer and just kind of just like not really being present in what you're doing, right? And then so for like one thing I've always enjoyed, and this really sort of compounds it. It's like, you know, you can go home. It doesn't have to be fancy or anything like that, but it's really just take in, you know, the things that you're tasting and smelling and eating and listening to, and just kind of, you know, feeling that moment, you know, as opposed to just being a fleeting thing where like you don't even remember that you did something. So that to me really struck forward, and I just remember that time so vividly. Paul being at the house and us, you know, cooking and working on music and just really being present to that, just enjoying all aspects.
Yeah.
It was really special.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. And we took a trip to Japan together, actually, around, I think it was 2004. So Caesar and I and my brother and a good friend of ours actually went to Japan, spent some time in Tokyo. And one of the things that struck us back then too, really on the same time as we were just going deeper and deeper into these ideas, was of course in Japan, just culturally, going back eons, the importance of enjoying the moment, ritual, going very narrow and deep on a particular enjoyable thing. The concept of going to a place, a restaurant that does nothing but create the perfect toast, literally like white toast cooked to absolute perfection, and with it black coffee, and that's literally all they serve is white toast preferably and black coffee. But it is the best. It is the most refined, sort of the ultimate ascetic version of that particular thing. Of course, you see this with any other thing, whether it's you can go narrow and deep into ramen, yakitori, whatever. This kind of the appreciation of the art, and also the importance of enjoying it fully and being present as you enjoy it, is something you see culturally in Japan that you really just don't see quite in the same way elsewhere. So, for example, in a ramen stall where you can't speak, you're not allowed to talk, you're not allowed to use your phone, and you have to. The importance is to the chef is just to sit and enjoy and really focus on the ramen and on the details of the noodles and the al dente quality of the noodles, and just a perfect juxtaposition between the ingredients. All of that stuff is just so important to them culturally, and it just the antithesis of that exists really, unfortunately, in the West, and so much you get people rushing through meals with the concept of drinking something like Soylent or something to get your nutritional needs. So you have so many disparate examples of how to live and how not to live, if you will, enjoy the moment, that I just think culturally this is more important than ever to focus on, and it fits so well, I think, philosophically and conceptually with the things that we're interested in as well. So that's kind of where we're heading, I think, with both aesthetically, philosophically, and musically, really, with our new album.
Oh, brilliant. Last question now. For people who haven't heard of Basic Pleasure Model, how would you describe yourselves in sound?
That's a great question. It's funny. There's a saying that sort of trying to talk about music or describe music with words is like dancing about architecture. I think that's a brilliant way to describe it. It's really hard to describe music and sound with words because it just doesn't do justice to it, and you steer people down different ideas when you say certain words. So I actually would really rather not describe it in words, particularly because I think we're this organic entity that just is sort of a work in progress, and so the only words that would maybe come to mind to me would be lush, introspective, hedonistic, but then there's also certainly elements that are indeed, we have a dance music element to it as well. So there's a lot of rhythmic stuff going on. So that's probably where
That's cool. That's a fair point as well. And I thought of your sound as quite very lush as well. That's what I thought of it too. So yeah, cool.
So good to hear.
Cool. Right. Well, that's all we have for tonight. And thank you, Paul, and thank you, Caesar, for joining me for the interview.
Michael, thank you for having us. This has been a long time in the making. Appreciate your long time support and interest, and we promise to finish the album now before the year 2152.
I'll be waiting. Yeah, well, thank you guys, and an absolute pleasure, for the support and everything. An absolute pleasure from me, and I'll talk to you guys soon.
Sounds great. Thanks again.
No
Cheers.
worries. Cheers. Take care, guys.
Yeah. Take care.
Take care. Thank you.
Cheers. See you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to Future Music from the Robot Lab interview file 3 with Paul Sebastien and Caesar Filori, aka Basic Pleasure Model. I've been your host, Exo Skull. You can follow me on Facebook, Mixcloud, Twitter, and YouTube. If you'd like to be interviewed, please email me at exoskullfmrl@gmail.com. That's exoskullfmrl@gmail.com. Ending for tonight's interview, I'll be playing more snippets of Basic Pleasure Model, another snippet of Deem, and also a snippet of Surrender ending with their latest single, Outside. Take care, and I'll see you next time.
In this place, time melts together, past and present collide. Somewhere outside, this room is too bright. No sheltered minds, I need to be outside. You were an open canvas in a toxic sea. Now she's running it blind, of life pretending to be. Their words are caustic, their lives untrue.